Hey guys, Sean here, welcome to the F1 Word, and for today's video I wanted to do something just a little bit different, I guess kind of like a getting to know me video, if you like, for want of a better term. I just kind of want to talk about my earliest F1 memories, how I got into the sport, who got me into the sport, and things like that. So, like I say, a bit of a getting to know me video, which I'm sure you'll all absolutely love. And I'm going to kind of, little disclaimer, this is all ad-libby, this is all off the top of my head, so this is not going to be particularly flowing. I will try and keep it in some kind of order, at least chronological, but we'll see how that goes. So I apologize in advance for the lack of structure that is inevitably about to strike this video. So right from the beginning then, I guess, and the person that gets the credit for really introducing me to Formula One was my granddad. 100% my granddad. There's no doubt about that. He had a boat when I was a kid. Nothing, it wasn't like a yacht or anything like that. It wasn't anything fancy. It was just like a little canal boat. And we used to go fishing at weekends and sometimes during the summer holidays as well. But every Sunday at 12:30, 1 o'clock-ish, everything would stop for Sunday dinner, as it did back then. I don't know if it still does. Maybe it does. But we used to sit down, have Sunday lunch, and of course on TV was the Grand Prix. And the TV, I can remember it was like a little portable black and white TV. The picture quality was pretty poor because, well, you know, we didn't have HD back then, obviously, and also it was a poor signal, but we still managed to follow it. And I remember watching a lot of questions, asking a lot of questions, and obviously my granddad, whilst we were watching along, would answer them for me, and that kind of began my love for the sport. It probably wasn't till after maybe a handful of those that I began watching the sport at home on my own, and I used to demand control of the TV for 2 hours every Grand Prix Sunday without fail, to the point where I would even hide the remote control. I would sit right in front of the TV and hide the remote because my sister would love to come in and start preaching to me about how it's boring, they just drive around in circles for 2 hours, and I knew if I left that room or she had the remote, that channel would get changed. So I used to make sure that would never ever happen, and I'm pretty sure if she was with me watching F1 today, she'd probably try and do the same as well. So, you know, it's not her sport, which is fine, but I used to make sure that remote was hidden so that I could keep watching. The first season I really remember in Formula One is probably 1992, right off the bat from South Africa, Nigel Mansell's dominant win. I can remember him having an interview after the Grand Prix where I think he gets asked something along the lines of, was that easy, or that looked easy? And his response, he looked knackered. I can remember he looked absolutely knackered, and he was just like, no, that wasn't easy, guys. Seriously, it is not easy. And I don't know why that sticks in my mind. It just does, right through to his title win, of course, in Hungary, and his crash with Ayrton Senna in Adelaide. I think history goes on to say that was a brake test, but I don't know. I'm not here to talk about the brake testing. Was it this? Was it that? I'm just talking about my memories of the sport, and I can remember a lot of fuss being made over that in the media. I don't know if it's because I kind of grew up in the UK that I remember that season so well, because it would have been so well documented and it would have been all over the news. So that's maybe why I remember that so well, because 1993, when Prost was dominating, I don't actually remember that season that well. I remember a couple of the races, and I can remember the reports at the end of the season when Prost had won the title. Obviously, rightly so, it's his fourth world title, but I don't remember it as vividly as I do 92. And that's probably, like I say, because I grew up in the UK, Nigel Mansell, a British driver, there was always going to be more coverage on the news for him. Without question, one of the toughest times for me as a kid watching Formula One was obvious, as it was for adults as well. Back in 1994 at Imola was the death of Ayrton Senna. It was tough. It was really, really hard to watch. It was live on TV. The crash itself, I don't remember being shown live. I think it just caught the aftermath on TV, but that was enough. But it didn't register to me that Senna was going to be hurt. I thought, he'll be all right. He'll get out of that car. He'll walk away. Everything will be absolutely fine. You know, I was 7, 8 years old at this point, so I don't think that really entered my mind that a driver could be killed on live TV at a racetrack. Obviously, Roland Ratzenberger had been killed earlier in the weekend, but this was an era in Formula One where practice and qualifying wasn't shown as it is now. You didn't see that live on TV. You sometimes got highlights, but even then they were condensed. You didn't get a lot of track action. So the Roland Ratzenberger accident, which obviously resulted in his tragic death, that was just another death that had been reported. It's just something I'd seen on the news, and in a little bit of what you could call build-up. We didn't have the big build-up that we have now to Grand Prix, but there was still a little bit that was talked about. So it wasn't something I'd seen or witnessed. So it still, although was real and was really, really sad and very emotional at the time, it wasn't something that was as real because I hadn't seen it. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes any sense at all. But with Senna's accident, I don't think I realised how bad it was initially. Like I say, I thought he'd get out and just walk away and he'd be fine. These guys are my heroes. I didn't think for a second anything bad was gonna happen, and I didn't think that any harm was gonna come to him. But then it wasn't until my parents, I remember a few oh no's and oh my gods, and that's when I thought, hang on a minute, this could be very serious. Something's not right here. And it's obviously then they extract him from the car. He's been treated by medics at the side of the racetrack, and that's when, it kind of hit me that something's not right here. And obviously the news broke later that night. even up to the point where the news broke, I still expected them to say, he's woken up, he'll be fine. He might have a couple of Grand Prix off, but he'll be all right. And obviously that didn't happen. And obviously he lost his life. A very difficult moment for me as a kid and for so many watching, for everybody watching, I think. Even my parents, it was an emotional time and it was really, really, really tough. My favourite season in F1 growing up was 1997. That surprises quite a few people because there were some really good seasons in the 90s. That was my era, I think, the 1990s and the early noughties, if you like. But that was the season for me. It had it all. It really was so dramatic throughout it. There were twists and turns. Right from the off, there was Villeneuve retiring in turn one. I think officially that went down as Herbert taking him out. But I seem to remember, correct me if I'm wrong, Eddie Irvine torpedoing down the inside and squeezing Herbert into Villeneuve. And that was retirement there. DC, of course, went on to win that Grand Prix, which was great to watch as a Brit, of course, but that car was never going to win the World Championship that year, so that was an extra bonus, kind of like a little underdog victory, which was nice. The standout race for me, though, I'm going to be honest, guys, I was a Michael Schumacher fan. Some people think I should be ashamed of that, but I'm not. For me, though, Monaco, 1997, it was a wet race. The dominance shown by Michael Schumacher was just absolutely incredible. Off the top of my head, I'm probably going to get slammed for this if this is wrong in the comments, so I apologise, but he was about 22 seconds clear after 5 laps. 22 seconds in 5 laps. Okay, effectively unchallenged because the Williams boys had screwed up their strategy and Rubens Barrichello was the second car on the track and was never going to challenge Michael Schumacher, but it still showed incredible driving. I remember that so well, right? I don't know why I remember that so well. I just do. And aside from, I think, a lock-up into Sainte-Devote, I don't think there was ever any moment where Michael Schumacher looked like he was going to crash out of that Grand Prix or fail to win it. Just absolute dominance. Probably the moment in 1997 that Schumacher's title credentials were underlined. But obviously, as we know, he messed that up at the end of the season in controversial circumstances, to say the least. I can remember that very, very well. Watched it on ITV, wasn't it then? ITV, it had gone from the BBC to ITV. So that was a big, big moment. I can remember as a kid, I was a Schumacher fan, as I say, caught up in Schumacher mania. The love for him was unbelievable. So I can remember being very much of the opinion, how dare Jacques Villeneuve have the nerve to try and overtake Michael Schumacher? If he hadn't have been there, Schumacher wouldn't have turned in on him, was definitely my opinion as a kid. Obviously, with hindsight now, looking back, I can see how out of order Schumacher was, how completely wrong he was, and how spot on the FIA were to punish him in the way they did, boot him out the championship. But to be honest, that's just how I was with Michael Schumacher. Everything he did, I defended, particularly from sort of 1997 onwards. 94, I don't think I really quite understood what was going on. I was still really, really young then, like I say, 8 years old maybe. It wasn't really until 1997 that I really managed in my head to find ways to defend him, which when you look at some of his incidents, it's amazing that anyone can find a way to defend him. We'll keep this chronology going because it seems to be working quite well. We're going to go right to the end of the 1998 season. I got up early hours, as so many F1 fans do, to watch the Grand Prix, and obviously the fury inside me when Michael Schumacher stalls on the grid. This was supposed to be his title winning day. He ends up at the back of the field, and of course we all know what happens when his tyre blew out. I can honestly say, without any shame at all, I absolutely sobbed. I I was devastated. That was supposed to be his year and it didn't happen, and I was so emotional about that. Something which led me to hate Mika Häkkinen at the time for winning the championship. Another one, how dare you win that championship? Again, one of those things with hindsight, but we'll come to that in a second. 1999, and I remember getting into a debate with my uncle, which kind of, I think he was trying to wind me up, if I'm being perfectly honest. He was trying to wind me up and trying to get a reaction and a bit of banter, if you like, but I was so upset that Mika Häkkinen won the title again, to the point where I just turned around and I said something along the lines of, oh yeah, well, if Schumacher hadn't broken his leg, Häkkinen wouldn't have won the title. It may have happened. He may still have won the title. He may not have won the title, but that's how much of a Schumacher fan I was. I was going to find every reason not to be happy for another driver to win the World Championship. Obviously, with hindsight again, looking back, Mika Häkkinen winning the title was a great story for Formula One. He'd had that horrific accident years before, and of course, he'd had so much bad luck, not least in 1997, where he retired from the lead of the Grand Prix a couple of times. Yes, he got his win at the final race of the season thanks to Jacques Villeneuve, but he'd had so much bad luck, so to win those titles back to back was a great story for Formula One. And that's me with a much older and much wiser head on my shoulders. But back then, I hated anybody that got anywhere near Michael Schumacher, which is why when he won the title in Japan in 2000, I cried for a whole other reason. Happy tears. I was absolutely over the moon, and I just wanted to just celebrate that. And of course, everyone else in my family was like, bloody cheat and all this, and they were giving it all the usual about Michael Schumacher, but I was there beaming from ear to ear, so happy that one of my heroes had finally won another world championship, and I was just absolutely over the moon, and I'm not going to lie about that. And of course, he went on to dominate the sport through to 2004, an era which, as a Schumacher fan, wasn't boring. To many it was, but I didn't find it boring, particularly 2003. What a great season that was, but I didn't find it boring in the slightest. Of course, when your football team's dominating or anybody you support is dominating, you don't find it boring. It's those that aren't winning that find it boring. So, and like I say, 2003, great season. He nearly lost the title. You know, McLaren very, very nearly nicked that from Ferrari, but of course, in the end, the Ferrari ended up being the quicker car and just about took the title and took it again in 2004. That 7th world championship. You know, if 2000 was emotional, that was even more emotional for me. Such a great moment. I genuinely, I know people have a hatred for Michael Schumacher, but even his biggest critics can acknowledge that that is an incredible achievement and was well deserved to take a 7th world title. I don't care what anybody says, that was a well-deserved thing. Yes, he's won championships in controversial style, but you cannot be a 7-time world champion unless you are a fantastic driver as well. So yes, controversy comes with it, but he also clearly had an incredible talent as well. And it just, that's what I saw in him, not the controversy. I didn't love him for the controversy. I loved him because he was an incredible driver. So for the young pretender Fernando Alonso to turn up and start challenging and of course take the titles in 2005 and 2006 was another reason for me to hate another driver. I could not stand Alonso in 2005 and 2006. Back to the 90s, how dare you challenge? You know, that was how it was. I mean, it was fantastic for the sport, again with hindsight, and going back to 2005 and 2006 to see him win those titles, great to see. But at the time, it was frustrating for me as a Schumacher fan to see him struggling so much, which he was struggling. But some of the fights Alonso and Schumacher had on track, I'm thinking Imola 2005, 2006 as well, of course, but what a fight in 2005 that was, particularly ITV going to adverts with a lap to go. That was a really, really clever move. One of the reasons I think we were all so happy when it ended up going back to the BBC. But that was a rivalry that was, you know, you look at rivalries Schumacher had in the past, like Montoya, for example, in that kind of era, there was hatred, absolute hatred there. Whereas with Alonso, there was a respect that the two of them have for each other. So it's a completely different rivalry, but it threw up some fantastic racing. I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to go into 2007 and onwards because that's sort of the last decade and all of that is very much fresh in my mind and fresh in your mind. So that's not what this video was about. It was more about looking back at my memories, my first love for the sport, and of course, my fanboy moments, if you like, for Michael Schumacher. Maybe in 2027, I'll look back at 2007 onwards and do a video on my memories of that then, but we shall see. That's a little bit off yet, a little bit of a way off yet, or at least I like to think it is, bearing in mind 1997 feels like yesterday. Let me know in the comments below, guys, your era of Formula One, your favourite driver, your favourite races. What are your memories? That'd be absolutely great for reading. I'll reply to as many as I can, but as ever, guys, thank you so much for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.